And it starts with, as I said, late night, Pac-12-ish after dark. Can we call USC and UCLA Pac-12 after dark? I do not know. But where I want to start is with USC against Fresno State. It was not a marquee game, but I do think there was a marquee story that came out of it. For people who stayed up late, credit to USC. It was never really close. The final score was 45-17. Now, Fresno starting quarterback got hurt late, but this one was never really in doubt. USC was up 14-0. They were up 21-3. They were up 42-17. It was never really competitive at any real point. It is USC's third straight double-digit win to open the season. And what I would say is, and what the topic of the day, in my opinion, is this. Is USC already in year two a playoff contender and maybe a favorite to make the playoff? I wouldn't have said it a month ago. I wouldn't have said it a week ago. But after watching USC, I'm telling you, I think this is a team that is good enough to make the playoff this year. And I almost feel like it's more of a sure thing than a lot of other teams. Now, before we get into it, a couple of things. One, I do want to reiterate a not a topic, but a thought and a theme that I say often. Just because I say USC is a playoff contender doesn't mean they're a national championship contender. Big difference, right? There's a difference between what it takes to get to the playoff and win games once you get there. We saw it with Cincinnati last year. Ironically, we've seen it in the past with Lincoln Riley's Oklahoma teams. So I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship. I'm not saying if you put them on a neutral field with Georgia, they're winning convincingly and Kirby Smart's overrated and Lincoln Riley fight on. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. And what I would also say is this. I do think that when I look at this story, maybe the conversation, the more that I think about USC, the more that I do think, like, maybe we shouldn't even be talking about the playoff this early altogether. Because what I would say is, before we even get into why I think they can make the playoff, I need to give them credit for something completely unrelated to the playoff that has nothing to do with the fact of whether they'll make it or not. It is the fact that I think, despite all of the crazy expectations coming into the year, I do think USC is very much ahead of schedule in the Lincoln Riley era in year one at USC. And let me explain. Listen, when Lincoln Riley was hired, we all loved it. I remember recording this podcast in this same seat 9, 10, 11 months ago, whatever it was, early December when Riley got hired. I said, this is one of the great hires I have ever seen in my life. And even in the lead up to the season, I absolutely thought that USC was going to be good, really good, and maybe in a perfect world, they were going to be able to compete for a Pac-12 title. At the same time, though, listen, college football is hard, man. Like, listen, I know we get spoiled by certain guys and certain coaches and certain teams and certain programs. College football is really hard. And so when we look at USC, I think they're so far ahead. Just think about all of these coaches through all of these years and the fact that it is not easy to take over a program and in year one have immediate success. Nick Saban, remember, he lost to Louisiana Monroe in year one at Alabama. Kirby Smart went 8-5 in year one at Georgia with a loss to Vanderbilt. And I know the SEC is different than the Pac-12, but what did I just tell you? Kirby Smart lost to Vandy. Nick Saban lost to UL Monroe. You go back to last year, Steve Sarkisian ended up with a 5-7 season, lost to Kansas that all of a sudden maybe isn't quite as bad as we thought. But I bring it up to say that taking over a college football program is hard. And so far, Lincoln Riley has made it look easy. That is the most impressive part to me, and why, yes, we're going to talk about the playoff in a second. But to me, just what they have done so far is the most impressive part at all. They have come in, they have completely flipped the roster, and they are operating at an insanely high level. I mean, just think about what Lincoln Riley did in the offseason, and this is part of why I had hesitation on USC in the first place. Remember, this was not an okay program that Lincoln Riley took over and they just wanted to be great. This wasn't an 8-4, 7-5 type program that had a bad year or two. This was a team that went 4-8 last year. They went 4-8, and some of those losses were really bad. 29-point loss to UCLA, a 14-point loss to Stanford that wasn't that close. They actually put up a bunch of points late to make it only 14 points, an 18-point loss to Oregon State. This team was really bad, and Lincoln Riley had major work to do when he got there. Overall, remember, this program took in 26 transfers this offseason from all across the country, low major, high major, group of five, power five, Oklahoma, Colorado, wherever. Also, eight high school recruits. So you do some simple math. They turned over like 40% of their roster, 32 players that are new to the program. And so when I look at them, that's what's most impressive to me. 32 new players from 32 different places and 85 players that are adjusting to a new coach, a new, scheme, new whatever, everything that comes with just even having a new coach. And then on top of that, you have a scenario where there are 32 players that have come from completely different places, not only dealing with a new coach, but a new way to practice, a new way to lift, a new way to eat after practice, a new way to recover, a new way to get ready. Like all of the things that go into this. It is not supposed to be this smooth. Yet here we are. And as I said, USC with 3 wins, all by double digits. None of them have been particularly competitive. And more than anything, I just got to say, this team and this program feels like it's ahead of schedule. I was watching them on Saturday night, and it literally looks like Lincoln Riley just picked up his Oklahoma program, took it, plopped it down in Los Angeles, new jerseys, a new visor, and they are the exact same team as last year. And that is the most impressive thing to me. But that's also not why you came here, and that's not why I led the show with them, because they look impressive or they're ahead of schedule. I'm leading the show with them because I believe this can be a playoff team this year. Now, what is the big knock on USC? What is the reason that when I say that, all of you are going to say playoff, you're going to do the Jim Mora, not Jim Mora Jr., who coaches at UConn now, Jim Mora Sr. Playoff, playoff. We're just trying to win a game, playoff. Here's why. Okay, so first of all, the knock on USC right now, the defense isn't very good. And listen, I'm not going to fight you on the fact that the defense isn't very good. They're ranked 83rd in the country right now. They are behind an Oregon team that gave up 1,000,000 yards and 1,000,000 points to Georgia in week 1. They are behind, a Louisville team that has given up a ton of yards early in the season. They are behind all sorts of teams that, are not, all these teams that are struggling. USC's defense is in some ways statistically worse than them. But what I would also say is, for everybody that criticizes, there's no way USC can win at the highest level playing defense the way that they are. Well, there's a couple things here that we have to consider. One, what is the old saying? There are lies, damn lies in statistics. Well, just saying that USC has the 83rd ranked defense is a little bit misleading, and let me explain why. Because that is just giving up yards is just one element of defense. And here is the crazy part about this situation at USC. Do you know who is number 1 in the country right now in turnover margin? It's USC. They forced 10 turnovers so far this season. By the way, you know who has a top 10 red zone defense right now? It's USC right now, this second, as a top 10 red zone defense. I actually saw a funny quote from one of their players. I believe it was Shane Lee, their starting linebacker. And he basically said, just because we give up a lot of yards doesn't mean we give up a lot of points. And while I don't know that that's something you want to print on t-shirts and like brag to the world about, he's not wrong. And I do think that's part of it. Like, you can just sit there and say they give up a lot of yards. Yeah, they give up a lot of yards, but they aren't giving up a lot of points. And I think that's important. 10 total turnovers, 3 defensive touchdowns. That matters. You know what else matters? This offense is so good. I don't know how many games this year the defense is going to be impacted on. Think about it. This offense is humming again, even at a level that I did not think it was going to look so good at in year 1. Now, I know Caleb Williams is a star. I know Jordan Addison is a star. But again, to ask all of these guys to come to USC in year 1 and just immediately flip a switch and just get it rolling, that's hard to ask, yet that's exactly what they're doing. Number 11 right now in total offense, USC is. They are putting up more yardage than some really good teams early on, including Oklahoma, including an Arkansas team that runs the ball right at you, including a Michigan team, by the way, that has played Hawaii, Colorado State, and UConn. Ole Miss, who we love, is behind USC. So they are moving the ball at will. And what really impresses me about this team, it's not just that they're moving the ball. It's the fact how they're doing it. Every game's a little bit different. Caleb Williams, 341 yards passing against Stanford 2 weeks ago. Saturday night, it was the run game, 2 different running backs with over 100 yards, Travis Dye and Austin Jones. And so you look at this team, they have multiple ways to beat you on offense. It isn't just the quarterback. It isn't just the run game. It isn't just one player. It isn't just this. It isn't just that. They can beat you in a lot of different ways. The other thing that I was thinking about, and I actually heard Joel Klatt from Fox say this, I thought he brought up a great point. It's not as though Lincoln Riley has never been in this situation before with an elite offense, a really bad defense, and still found a way to make the playoff. Remember the 2018 season? I give Joel Klatt credit for this. I want to make sure I credit him because he was the one that brought it up. Do you remember the 2018 season? That was the Kyler Murray Heisman Trophy season. Kyler Murray won the Heisman Trophy because he had to put up 50 points every game because Oklahoma's defense was terrible, okay? I looked it up today. Here were Oklahoma's final 4 regular season games. A 51-46 victory over Texas Tech. A 48-47 victory over Oklahoma State. A 55-40 victory over Kansas, and that was not when Kansas was good, people. And oh, by the way, a 59-56 Black Friday win against West Virginia. Look at those again. The last 4 games, they gave up 47 points, 40 points, 56 points, 46 points, and they still managed to win the Big 12 and make the playoff. And so why can't USC? The Big 12 back then, I would argue, was probably tougher than the Pac-12 is now. Why can't USC do it? Look at USC's schedule and tell me there are guaranteed losses on the schedule. They don't exist. Obviously, the toughest game on the schedule remaining, Utah, that's a couple weeks. We're going to learn a lot about USC, right? Because Utah does this, the one thing that USC has no answer for, I don't believe, in this era of USC football. Utah is tough. Utah is physical. Utah is mean. And they are going to run the ball right at you. And I don't know that USC can stop that. But if USC wins that game, and oh, by the way, even if they lose it, if USC wins that game, look at the rest of the schedule. The Pac-12, by the way, has 2 other teams ranked in the top 25 outside of Utah, outside of USC. USC does not play Oregon. USC does not play Washington. And while I do think there are some traps along the way, starting this weekend against Oregon State on the road, you look at that schedule, you find me 2 guaranteed losses. Even if you play Utah, you can still lose that game and make the Pac-12 championship game. Remember, this year, Pac-12 championship game, it is the 2 best teams in the league, 2 best win-loss records in the league. It is not East or North and South, excuse me. And so USC, in theory, could lose to Utah, still get to the Pac-12 game, and beat them there and make the college football playoff. And again, you look at the rest of the schedule. Yes, Oregon State is tough, and I think they're going to be a challenge this weekend. Washington State just won at Wisconsin. Arizona is improved. But also Arizona just almost lost to an FCS team on Saturday night. Cal is not good. They lost to Notre Dame, who loses to everybody. Notre Dame is not itself. USC plays them late. Colorado might be the worst Power 5 team in college football. So I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't want to beat this into the ground. But I look at USC. I'm telling you, they're ahead of schedule. They look better than I thought they would. And I really do think, you're going to think I'm crazy. I really do think this is a team that can make the college football playoff in 2022. I cannot believe I'm saying it. I believe they can make the playoff. Now, once they get there, they might lose by 40 to Georgia. Make no mistake. Georgia might never throw a pass that entire game, just run the ball right at them. But can they make the playoff this year? I believe USC can.